Hey everyone, Jacinto here. Today I'm going to be going over why I switched to this UI from this one. So I recently swapped to ElvUI, which is a very different user interface for World of Warcraft. In this video, I'm going to be going over why I made the switch to ElvUI after using the standard user interface for 15 years. I do think the default user interface looks pretty aesthetic. You have nice backgrounds for your tabs, nice borders around your spells and your experience bars and everything. It looks pretty nice in general. Honestly, this is probably why I didn't switch to a different UI sooner. I just really like the look of the standard UI, and I was very used to it since I did play on it for 15 years. While the standard UI has gotten me through higher end content for many years, I realized that it has many flaws and it can definitely be improved upon. The first downside about the standard UI is that it's not customizable at all. You're able to hide a few action bars here and there, but apart from that, you can't really do a whole lot. You can't move around action bars to exactly where you want them to be. You can't move around tabs or anything like that. Everything is pretty much set in place. The second downfall for the standard UI is the placements of the health bar, power bar, and your abilities. You are able to move the player frame in the top left corner wherever you want on the screen, but it just looks out of place if it's not in that top left corner for me. Maybe I'm just so used to it being there for so many years, but it looks weird when I place it anywhere else. Having the player frame at the top left corner makes it so that I have to look very far away from my action bar when I have to look at my health and my power bar. Since my main action bar is at the very bottom of my screen, I have to look a great distance to get all the way to my health and my power bar. Additionally, if you want to track any of your buffs, you have to look on the top right corner of your screen by the minimap there. So right now, if you want to go from your health to your action bar to your buffs, you have to be looking in 3 separate places. On top of that, you want to know what's going on with your character as well, so sometimes you do want to be looking directly at your character and not at those other 3 things. So if you're looking at your character too, that gives a 4th place where you have to look at on your screen. So one thing I really wanted to minimize for my new UI was the amount of space between the health bar, power bars, action bars, buffs, and where your character is placed. Another flaw with the default UI is just the bad use of space. If we look down at the main action bar, we see that action bar is surrounded by 2 creatures. These are purely for aesthetics, and they don't add anything to your gameplay. Looking at your player frame, you really don't need your icon right next to your name, health, and power bar. Although you might be used to looking at it, it doesn't serve any purpose really. Also, due to not being able to move the layout at all, you have weird spacings between your bag bar and your action bar that you just can't put anything in because they're too small. So those are the main flaws I found with the standard UI, and really the flaws that I wanted to get around with my new UI. Here's an example of what my standard UI looked like while in a Mythic Plus dungeon. As you can see, you really have to look all around the screen to get the information you want, to look at your cooldowns, your health, your power bar, your buffs, and everything. With everything we covered in mind, the standard UI just didn't seem efficient anymore in my mind. Now we'll take a look at my new UI, which is ElvUI. Now ElvUI doesn't come like this when you first download it. You have to move things around and resize everything to get it exactly how you want it to be. You can do this by typing in /moveUI once you get ElvUI, and now you can see all of the boxes of all the player buffs, debuffs, and everything. You can move everything around, hide things, add more things, whatever you need. It's a bit overwhelming at first, but after a bit, you'll get used to it and you'll be able to move it around pretty easily. And when you're done moving everything, you can just lock it in place. It'll lock, you won't be able to move anything, and it's just like a UI that you can use. So comparing this user interface to the standard user interface, we see I have my action bars in the middle of my screen, but we don't have all of my spells there. So things like Heart Strike, Death Strike, Marrow Rend, I don't need to see them on my bars. I just need to know what keys they're bound to, and I have that in my memory, so I don't actually need to see those spells. So what we have here is just everything that I have to track cooldowns for pretty much. So as you can see on the top row, I have 8 action buttons. Since I'm on the Blood Death Knight tank, most of these are mitigation based buttons, just very important cooldowns that I want to track. Below that, I have 10 smaller buttons. Most of this is utility, so I have CCs, movement speed increases, and then some abilities to track as well. As you can see, I have Blood Boil and Death and Decay. And then I have 2 bars at the side as well, mainly just because I ran out of room, but these are nice to use for like trinkets. Below and around my action bars, I have my runic power, so as you can see, if I drop Death and Decay, it goes up and a number appears as well. And you can see it draining down slowly. And below my runic power are my runes. Now they look quite a bit different than the runes on the standard user interface when they were red skulls. Now they're blue bars, but you can kind of see them regenerate a bit better and when they're going to be ready. To the left of the action bars there, I have my health, I have my exact health number as well as my percentage, and my name on top of that. And to the right of my action bars, we have the targeting frame. I have the cast bars right below the targeting frame, and for myself, right below my player frame there. So by moving all of this information, the health, the power bars, the action bars, and the targeting frame, into the center of my user interface, I'm able to just look at the center. I don't have to look in the top left anymore and then go down to my action bars. I can just look at the center, and at the same time, I can a lot more easily look at my character and see what's going on as well. See if I have to move out of mechanics or anything. I do have a slightly different chat log as well. It's colored a bit more now, but it's pretty much the same. It functions the same as a standard UI chat log. And the bottom now, as you can see, we don't have our action bars or tabs or anything. I mean, we have pretty much all the tabs memorized, right? Spellbook, achievements, talents, and everything. If you got those memorized, you don't need to see them at the bottom. Again, you also don't need to see the spells that you don't need to track at all. And your bags too. I mean, B, Shift B, it's always going to be that to open. You've done that a million times. You don't need to see your bags in there. It is nice to show your spec and durability, quick join, and all the other stuff at the bottom there, just so you can see that easily and not have to open various tabs. As you can see, I do have another action bar to the right here. So my standard UI, I did have the 2 columns of action bars. Now I just have the 1, mainly with my consumables, mounts, and any other auras that I need to use. Now you might be wondering what I've done for the buffs. Buffs you can still see at the top right of my screen, but I did make weak auras for all of the buffs that I want to track. So if I pop Vampiric Blood here, you can see in the middle, just above my action bar, there is a timer showing that it is currently active, and it's active for this amount of time. So I'm able to do this for any ability I want, and everything, literally everything now is in the center. All my buffs, my health, power bar, action bars, targeting frame, and everything. So I just have to look at the center for everything that I need. If I find that I want to track something else, I'll just create another weak aura for it. But yeah, ElvUI has been working out really well for me so far. It took a little bit to get used to, but once you practice with it in Mythic Plus and raids a bit, and you really get used to it, you do see it's a lot more efficient having everything in the middle of your screen. You might be thinking, oh, what if some ability happens right under the buttons since I'm not able to see there? That's why you want a little bit of room between your buttons and your character, just so you can see right underneath your character. But for the most part, anything here in the middle, you shouldn't really have to be worried about. If you do, you can move your camera angle a bit and you can see it there. And again, I did customize ElvUI a fair bit. There is a different achievement tab and talent tab that looks different for ElvUI, but I switched it back just to the standard UI skins, just because I like how it looks like that. So yeah, that's basically why I switched to ElvUI, just so I can get everything in the middle of my screen. I don't have to look all around it in both corners and the bottom anymore for any information. I just have to look in the middle, and I can look at my character at the same time. It makes it very efficient. And if you look at most of the top WoW players, they are using ElvUI or a UI where you can put more buttons in the middle of your screen there. There are some that use standard UI with weak auras as well, but for the most part, they have a lot more of that information right below their character in the middle of the screen. Now to get in the main menu of ElvUI, all you have to do is type in chat /EC, and now you get to the main menu. And you're able to switch parameters into and out of the standard UI if you wish. So for example, I have bags disabled. That means that if something's disabled, it reverts to standard UI. And if something's enabled like action bars, it uses the ElvUI version. So there's all these different categories that you can enable or disable just to get the UI that you really want. And if you go to skins, you see there's a lot of things to choose from that you can revert to standard UI or keep in ElvUI. So I did uncheck some of these things. I might tweak it a bit more as well. So the achievement tab, I like the standard UI achievement tab. So I uncheck that so it reverts back to the standard UI achievements. Same with bags, looking for group, mail frame, loot frames, and a bunch of other things too. Overall, I really like the customization ElvUI brings, and I'll definitely continue to use this in the future. I hope this gave you a good idea of why I switched to ElvUI, and maybe if you're considering switching to it as well, it might give you a bit of motivation to check it out and try it out for yourself. Again, it does take a little bit to get used to, especially if you've used standard UI for a long time. So don't abandon it right away. I did switch to ElvUI before a couple times and didn't stick with it just because I wasn't used to it. I thought after 10 minutes, okay, I'm not really used to looking here. You're going to find yourself still looking where your action bars are, where your player frame is originally. But just stick with it for a bit, customize it how you want it to be, and I think you'll really like it, especially for PvE content. Right now is a great time to change your UI as well. Shadowlands is 1 week away from today, and even when you get into Shadowlands, you have 2 weeks until Mythic Plus and raids come out, so you got a good amount of time to really experiment with your UI and get it perfect before the big stuff is released. But thank you so much for watching, everyone. I really appreciate the support, and I'll see you in the next one.